Well, welcome everyone to the Mayor's Press and Community Briefing. This is the second one, so we must be on a trend by now. There's two, you can connect the dots. And the plan is to have this be quite a lot different than the way you would normally interact with the mayor or city council members. And that is very informally, and also you can ask questions and I can respond. What a great idea. But certain things in our procedures and in the law doesn't let us do that from the council dais. So the idea of this also is to get more communication than maybe we would do in other settings, and maybe pick up on some things that we forgot to tell you that we started to do, or things that have changed course, or as tonight, to drill down a little bit deeper on one of the particular big objectives we have in the city council this year for the residents, and that is housing. So with me tonight is our Director of Planning Services, Jonathan Late, who will have a handoff here reasonably shortly and take you into a lot of detail on a bunch of the housing stuff. And of course, the well-known Ed Chicada, our city manager, who can answer questions on anything in any department, so a valuable resource. We're going to do these relatively monthly, depending on news to report and other things going on, such as the state of the city speech that happened last month. And I'm hearing that you all like the setting, that the innovation of Rivian Motors came off, as did the setting, and got good feedback on that, getting out of City Hall and getting in front of people in a different setting. Overall, I'm going to give sometimes my opinions, but if I do, I'm going to try to note that, because as everybody knows, I'm one of 7 council members, and mostly I'm just reporting on the news. If I get into a position, I'll let you know that. Our ground rules are, we're going to have comments from myself and John and possibly Ed, and then we're going to go to questions, and the press gets first shot at me, and then after that we will go to the audience in the room, and there are 2 audiences online, meaning we're on Midpen tonight as well as YouTube, but it's not interactive with that section of the group. So I'm going to launch into it. Although this is mostly about housing, I just wanted to bring you up to date on a very important upcoming issue on City Council, which happens every time this time every year, which is the city budget. And we're getting going on that. The Finance Committee is starting to put in their long hours digging into it. The city manager will be presenting a budget draft at the end of April, and this process will go through July, back and forth between the Finance Committee and City Council in a number of meetings. So you may want to look at the website and tune in on those that you want to be involved in. As you know, the uncertainty in our country right now makes this a pretty difficult budget year to anticipate what's going to happen. I've already mentioned this in one other setting. I don't know exactly where it was. We already have a shortfall in tax revenue from car leasing and sales tax, and that's not good. We don't know if it's a blip or if it's a trend, and that's just one of the indicators that we're confronting with the uncertainty coming from Washington. So the council is going to be very prudent and physically conservative in terms of the planning. And then, as always, we're looking at the budget when it's in place, and sometimes we cut a little bit more, and sometimes we add a little bit more back. So just alerting you to the fact that that's coming up, and this is a different kind of year. So now I want to move on to housing, and I think, as you all know, housing is one of our top 4 priority areas this year, as set by the City Council. This year it's a very specific shift to housing implementation as opposed to housing planning. So I'm just going to give you an overview on some of the kind of big picture things, and then I'm going to turn it over to John for that, and we'll both take questions on it. As you also probably know, we have a housing mandate from the state to produce 6,086 new homes throughout this next cycle. We've been planning for this housing element for years, frankly. talked to John yesterday in a different meeting. I said, how long do we work on getting this housing element out? And I think it was about 4 years, from the working group to commissions to the council and to input from the citizens. And we came up with a detailed plan in our housing element of how we're going to do that. It's certified by the state, and our investment period is over, so now it's time to move to our execution phase. So here's some of the key initiatives in the new housing element. First is the rezoning of the San Antonio corridor, and the plan and the vision there is to have a full amenity neighborhood in our city, the San Antonio neighborhood. What we're not going to do is just stack people in skyscrapers there and say we're done. So we're very committed to that, and that was all part of the planning and will be part of the execution. We've done updated zoning in very significant ways along El Camino Real to create the new El Camino Real focus area that has a lot more density in addition to other features, and John will comment on that as well. We're looking at all kinds of areas in town to do what we call infill housing projects, where we can sort of squeeze them in. And one area where we're going to do that is Town and Country. And in fact, just last week, we approved the first project there, and we hope there's going to be more housing in that area. One of the things we're very adamant about in the planning process all the way through is that we're going to plan new housing elements for all kinds of folks, for all kinds of needs at all kinds of stages of their life, from studios to 3 bedrooms to seniors to disabled, to make sure that we're really meeting the broad needs of all of our future residents and the existing ones that might want to transition to other kinds of housing as well. And then a dominant number of our planned housing units are deed restricted affordable housing units, so we can create more social and economic diversity for our citizens that are coming here. And I'm going to comment on that a little bit later. Our goal there is about 2,500. That's a big number. That's a big number. But it's really essential. It's the biggest need for our city, and that's what we really have to work a little bit harder on. So just a couple of pipeline kinds of statistics on where we are on housing that's getting built. I commented on this 2 months ago in the briefing, and happily it's gone up a little bit. So we now have 2,755 units included in project applications, including 707 affordable units. And we have 522 housing units permitted, including 168 affordable units. And then we just have 2 recently approved housing projects. One is the aforementioned one at 70 Encina in Town and Country, and those are the first ever there, and those are for sale townhomes, a different kind of product type than we're maybe used to seeing in town. And then the next one is 55 units at 3265 El Camino, which is an affordable housing project. So we've got some action happening from the new housing plan and developer interest. So with that, I want to shift over to Director Late and have him review sort of the goals and the activities of the major area plans. We're planning a number of areas in our city. And then after that, he's going to recap the additional enhancements that we may make in the ADUs, accessory dwelling units, which is a very successful housing type for us so far. So hand this over to Director Late, who's been fully involved in this process on a 24/7 basis. So take it away.
All right, good evening. So I'm Jonathan Late. I'm the Director for Planning and Development Services, and as the Mayor noted, I'm going to touch on a couple of our area plans that we're working on. Happy to answer any more detailed questions, but we are just starting our first one, which I'll start with, and that's the San Antonio Road corridor plan that we're looking at. This will extend roughly from the Caltrain station in Mountain View and along the corridor to Project Home Key, our 88-bed transitional housing project that we're working on. And as you're all familiar, this is of course an area that borders Mountain View, so we'll be taking into consideration the land uses, the businesses that are in both our city and Mountain View. Our goal, as the Mayor had noted, is to reimagine this area as perhaps a series of neighborhoods along San Antonio Road that supports greater housing development and density, commercial services, neighborhoods serving commercial uses, and really focusing in on a multimodal approach to how we get along on, move around on San Antonio. As you may know, San Antonio is a very important roadway, not only for our city, but for other cities as well. It is a designated truck route in the city, one of the few. And so there's a lot of uses and competing interests on San Antonio, so this will require a fair amount of thought and planning. But our goal is to make sure that with the new units that we're adding, the new homes and families that would be there, that we have a safe and convenient way for people to move across San Antonio and to access commercial services and parks and other facilities and schools in our city and also in Mountain View. The City Council recently approved a 3-year contract with Ramey and Associates. This is a consultant who's providing professional services to us. We've selected Ramey in part because of their great experience that they have on the peninsula, but also very closely in Mountain View. They've done a number of projects there, so they're very familiar with the project area. We hear sometimes that these planning initiatives can take some time, so we are committed to move quickly. We want to move as quickly as we can because we know there's some interest in housing development on San Antonio, and we want to be able to implement our plan, or at least get our vision going to inform any future housing developments that may want to take place. As I noted, we just started. We had our kickoff meeting recently, but there is, and we anticipate this will take about 2.5 years for us to, from this point roughly, to complete the project, at least get it to council for review. Let's see, we started a project webpage, so you can access that on the city's page. And we are going to be looking to the community to join us in this process, and we'll be forming a community advisory group. And applications, I believe, opportunities to submit an application will begin next month, very shortly. We'll be looking for different perspectives that people have who live here, who work here, who are property owners, any number of categories, faith-based institutions, people who attend schools in the area, our youth. There's a wide variety of categories that we're looking for folks to participate in that process. And we hope to start in spring, I guess later spring, our initial outreach efforts with Earth Day event coming up on Sunday. We'll be present with a booth to start socializing this project. Mayfet and the housing fair at City Hall on May 7th. Will be some opportunities to learn more about this project. Switching now to the downtown housing plan. This is another area plan that is set forth in our housing element, and as the mayor speaks about moving from planning to implementation, this is another part of that effort. We are looking to, at the university downtown area, which has the second highest ridership in the Caltrain station, as an opportunity to find opportunities for additional housing in that university downtown area. We'll be looking at our infrastructure and planning for any improvements that may be necessary there to help accelerate housing production. We of course want to maintain the downtown as an attractive local and regional destination through this process. This initiative is supported by a grant from the Metropolitan Transportation Commission for about $800,000, and we're 1 year into a 3-year planning effort for this initiative. We've had some previous engagement opportunities at City Hall and at pop-ups around downtown, farmers markets, and we had a survey that was available late last year. We have established a community advisory group for this plan as well, and they have met and are continuing to be a part of that process. Similarly, at these different community events coming up, we'll also have a booth to talk about our downtown housing plan. Moving on to the El Camino Real focus area, the City Council in 2023 originally adopted the first housing focus area. This was in response to, again, our housing element, but also a recognition of development interest and pressure on El Camino, in part inspired by builder remedy applications that were filed on El Camino. So we took that opportunity to see if we can develop an alternative to the builder's remedy process, and as an alternative to the state density bonus, which is a state law that provides increased development potential based on the amount of affordable units that are provided on site. And we came up with this housing focus area, which conveys greater development potential than can be achieved in the state density bonus, and conveys many of the meets at least the development envelope of many of the builder remedy projects that were filed at the time. So these standards increase height and floor area, they reduce setbacks, and they create a number of objective development standards to support greater density and development along this corridor. The City Council has asked us to extend the housing focus area, which we are in the process of doing. The Planning and Transportation Commission has met and made a recommendation, and I believe it is in May or June next month, or the month after, where we'll be presenting our recommendations to the City Council for their review of an expanded program. This requires at least 20% of the units that are built to be deed-restricted at the low income level, which is 80% of the area median income. And then the last item I'm going to touch on has to do with accessory dwelling units, which is not an area plan or a focus, but it is a significant policy initiative that is a part of our housing element, and one that has had tremendous success in the city of Palo Alto. Before we started making changes to the accessory dwelling unit regulations, the city would have 4, 5, or 6 ADU applications a year. We are now well past 100 applications a year that we process, and we have estimated in our housing element to produce 512 units over an 8-year period. 2 years into the program, we're more than halfway through that, and if you pick up the flyer, you can see that we permitted already in the last couple of years somewhere around 250, 270 permits just for accessory dwelling units. One of the challenges with ADUs is that the state constantly is tinkering with the regulations, and so when they make a change at the legislative level, we need to update our local zoning to match the state. And so we're in the process of doing that now, and I think it's May 12th, we're going to be before the City Council with our latest revisions to the accessory dwelling unit ordinance, and looking forward to have that be in alignment with the state. Locally, we've adopted an accessory dwelling unit handout, which is available online to help guide folks who are interested in developing an ADU. And we have worked with other regional entities to create a process whereby if somebody, a developer, was interested, or an architect, to having a pre-approved set of plans be available, we have that system set up. We're just waiting for candidates to come into that process so we can get them posted on our website. Let's see, I think, Mayor, I'll conclude with that and turn it back over to you.
Thank you. That was very, very informative for all. I just wanted to point out that this idea of expanding the El Camino Real focus area, we haven't even built it there yet, and we're already expanding. And the reason is because other developers across the street said, why can't I do that? So it's very encouraging after all the work we've done for years to see developers saying, this is a good idea, let's do this. So that's why this came up at all right now. I mean, it may have come up a year or so from 2 years ago, but they're saying, no, we want to get going. So John jumped on it and getting it over to council, and I think that's probably going to be passed. It's a prediction, it's not a vote, it's not an opinion. I'm being objective here. And as he also said, which is just crucial, part of the deal there that needs to be negotiated with each of the, well, it doesn't need to be negotiated, it is the deal. If they want that, it has to be 20% affordable. That's crucial, and at 80% of very immediate income and below. So not the state definition of 120% affordable, which I find an interesting way to define affordable, if it's 20% over market rate, or over 100%. But that's the way it is. And that's another really terrific advantage of this. And our partners, our developer partners are buying into it. And so, you know, we're grateful for that. So it's been an exchange of benefits to benefits between the two parties. I want to shift now to affordable housing. And first I want to note that May starts Affordable Housing Month. I think in Palo Alto it needs to be every month because we have so much work to do. But that's May 17th, and we are actually doing a tabling event in honor of that right out in front of City Hall on the 17th at 11 to 1 o'clock with lots of information for people who are interested in what these services are, what available services are for affordable housing, other people who are interested in putting up ADUs. It's just a variety of information. We did it 2 years ago and I was there. It was absolutely slammed on the City Hall. So there's just a lot of good information and we're reaching a lot of people that way, and I hope it's some of the people that are listening or sitting here.
May 11th?
May 17th?
May 17th, 11 to 1.
Thank you.
Because we need affordable housing. And the problem with affordable housing is that in spite of having done it before, our challenge is even greater now because we still have the needs. We want the lower income folks to have a place to live in Palo Alto. It's really that simple. We've long been a leader in the production of affordable housing, and we're currently the second highest inventory in the county for having done that on a affordable housing sort of per capita basis. But it's just really challenging, and the starting point is that every affordable housing unit is affordable because they don't pay as much rent, which is the point. And from the developer standpoint, that's also the point because the developer gets less revenue, so it's harder to justify the cost money that they get from investors to put into it to get a return on investment, which is lower. So it's just this constant battle, and even developers we talk to, they get it. They understand that that's what we need. But you know, they've got to make their project work. So that's where we've come up with some of the things like we have in the El Camino Real focus area. A bunch of agencies, including the two we use most here, Eden Housing and Alta Housing, have always used special tax incentives. It's a whole different program to help them finance it. They usually get something like free land from us, from the developers. We're talking about us. But even these agencies really can't do a project these days with the cost of construction and labor, unless they also get some help with the development costs. That's not a negotiation. That's just a fact to get up the housing units. And the housing units don't cost any less that they're affordable or non-affordable. They're in the range of $750,000 or up. So quite simply stated, Palo Alto really needs significant funding to make these projects work and to really move the needle on affordable housing in our city. We just have to move beyond the inclusionary housing that we get, which is great, as Jonathan just said. We're getting 15 to 20% in a new project, but just not enough. And ideally, I think Palo Alto should, in some way, shape, or form, raise a significant fund to close this gap over the next about 10 years. Perhaps enhanced by partnerships with local companies who want lower income people to live, lower paid people in their companies to live here, not live in Tracy or places like that, which is absolutely the case. So we're committed to really exploring the options there this year. We made a little stab at it last year, but we really want to dig into it, and it is part of the staff's official work plan this year in 25. And another possibility is a regional bond measure. There are currently two bills in the state legislature, that may do this. But it's just way too early to tell. We're just so early in the session that it's really too hard to handicap. But that would be a welcome addition to the sources of funding, notwithstanding we have to figure out, who gets what, how much of it. So that could take some arm twisting across the table between someone from Los Altos who's here, and somebody from Palo Alto, and somebody from Santa Clara, and so on. But that's a good problem to have. So just in summary on the affordable housing challenge, is that this is the type of housing we need most of any housing type in the city for the reasons we talked about. But we have to solve this problem if we want the social and economic and demographic mix of new neighbors that we want to attract to live here. So it's a big problem, which I think means it takes more effort, not that we can just ignore it because it's so hard. So that's where I think we stand on that, and we hope to have some action on that to report later in the year. So that's the overall on housing. We're about right on time for where we want to be, and now I'd like to open it to questions, first of all from any members of the press, then to any members of the public or anybody else. And also would like the public to try to focus on questions rather than statements about a particular position, because that's what the format is here.
Great, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Planning Director. I have a quick question about the area plans, since they play such a big role in the forthcoming plans for San Antonio and downtown. The city has a pretty mixed record with area plans. I feel like the last big success story was more than 2 decades ago in SOFA, and some people kind of lost interest in the Ventura plan before it got approved. And then we had smaller efforts in Cal Avenue and East Meadow. So I just wanted to ask, what did you learn from the Ventura effort and other area plans that'll help you make sure that the San Antonio and downtown ones are going to be successful and people will remain engaged throughout the process? Thank you.
John's had more experience with this, so I didn't take first shot. Oh, you should pass this around now.
Thank you, Gennady, for that question. And yeah, I don't disagree that the track record on coordinated area plans have not been as where we probably want them to be as a community. One of the distinctions that we're making with the two area plans is that we're not calling them coordinated area plans. We're not following the rule book that's set forth in our local zoning, but we're actually following state law with respect to specific plans. And this provides a little bit more nimbleness for us to be able to process these applications, or these area plans, just in terms of the requirements of what we need to follow. But some of the other aspects of these plans is that we don't have council-appointed community groups. We've sort of decentralized a little bit of the community engagement aspect of it, so that the city manager is selecting the members of these coordinated area plans. Last year we did it with the downtown housing plan. We had the mayor and vice mayor, then mayor and vice mayors weighing in on that selection process, having a chance to take a look at that. And so it's a little bit more informal, and it doesn't result in sort of the same sort of process, so we can move more quickly through that. The other challenge is time. The longer these initiatives take to advance, we lose interest in the community. And frankly, it's also tough on staff to maintain that enthusiasm on a project when it's dragged on for 4, 5, or 6 years. So we're committed to move quickly, and we've arranged our scopes to reflect that. And we're also relying on the consultants to also move quickly and advance these outreach engagement efforts and produce these products that we can get to the city council and the community for review. So we'll see how it plays out, because this is the first set since the North Ventura Coordinated Area Plan. The one last other piece I'll say about that is it's really important to be really clear about what goals and outcomes we want to have. I think that's shifted a little bit with NVCAP between some initial sort of where we started the project and how it changed over time. So moving quickly can also keep us focused on what those goals are. Mayor, anything to that?
I totally agree with that, and I think the other thing, as I say it, it's going to sound like it's going to take more time. But I think there's the opportunity in this round with these things for the council to be involved earlier in the process, as opposed to hand it over to a community group for 2 years and then see what they found out, and then come back and say, man, that's not quite what we were thinking. So a little bit more iterative in that regard. But we're also, I just want to underscore, we're still doing a lot of outreach. You know, we've done a lot of already in Mitchell Park, you know, more outreaches and playing with the Monopoly toys on the table for this is a hotel and this is where the house goes and so on. So we're really nuts and bolts, sleeves rolled up, still getting that direct input from our residents. Other questions from press? Okay, shift to non-press residents.
Yeah, I'm Sonia Bradsky, and I live in Green Meadow, and I guess I'm just really concerned about all this traffic, you know, we already have terrible traffic, and now that you're adding all this extra housing, and how you're gonna cope with all this.
Well, for one thing, I think you're right, there's gonna be more traffic, so I'm not gonna be one to say, well, people aren't gonna need cars anymore. So let's first address that as, from my perspective, as reality. And there's gonna be a lot of planning between Jonathan's group and the transportation office to get that moving as sort of cleanly as possible. And we also mentioned the multimodal options, because I do think people are gonna wanna shift out of cars, not drive it more often, I mean, as often. So it's all part of the planning process, but I don't think you're wrong, and I don't think anybody can say we're not gonna have more traffic. But we are definitely gonna have more housing. I mean, we as a city, apart from RENA, we want some more housing, particularly for our affordable needs. But on top of that, we have a number from the state that we don't really control, and whatever that is, that we have to get it done. So that's the law, so that's what we're gonna have to sign up to do. So there will be more traffic. I don't know if you want to add anything to that?
Only to acknowledge the existing condition and the concern about adding more density to San Antonio and the surrounding areas. So I don't disagree with, you know, what was said, but I would also like to offer that we're looking at more solutions to encourage other means for people to get around, so that not everybody has to rely on their vehicle. Some people will, and they'll need to, and that's going to continue. But if we can create some additional alternatives for using a bike or you know, walking, and providing more services that are accessible at shorter distances, so that people don't have to get into their cars. These will be things that we'll be looking at, and of course, we want to hear from the community too, what other ideas that we might be missing.
I have two questions. One, the El Camino focus area. Is there going to be a citizens advisory group for that?
So not for that one, because it's not an area plan. This is an ordinance that the city council gave us direction to do, and it was pretty clear in the housing element, it's sort of the expectation of that process.
That's all I goes, yes or no is fine. The second question, is there any way to determine with all these ADUs that have been built, how many of them are being used as housing and how many are being used as offices?
Yeah, fair question, and we don't have information on that, but it is something that we're interested in working on and preparing a survey that we would, a voluntary survey that, of course, that we would send out to property owners to just ask some information about how it's being used and sort of income levels, so that we can get a sense for, you know, are they being used at sort of a market rate rental, or are they being used to help a family member at a discounted rate, or something like that. We may have to make that anonymous. Yeah, we would too, because it actually would help with our reporting to HCD, that Housing and Community Development Department, to be able to report out and get credit for affordable units that are being produced through ADUs. But I don't believe for a moment that every one of those units are being used as you know, as intended. That there was, I think that's just reality.
Hi, I'm Elise and I live on Middlefield Road near that busy intersection with Embarcadero Road, and with a lot of confusion and apprehension, I read in the Palo Alto Online, one proposal being considered was constructing, and correct me if I'm wrong, a concrete wall along Middlefield to make bike riding safer. And when I look at the traffic and wonder, how come there is no calming or enforcement on Middlefield when I see people going 45 and 50 miles an hour in that intersection whenever they can, which is when people are trying to pick up their kids, when they're getting off shift work in the afternoon, in the morning, that when the congestion is not incredible, thanks to the Junior Museum having eliminated gas parking places when that was constructed, and the fact that children and families have to walk a block to get to Walter Hayes School. This is a blunder which it seems to me wants to engraft another blunder over that. Why not think about slowing down traffic with, I know stoplights are expensive, or with traffic humps where people simply cannot go 55. An officer I talked to years ago at a market said, we don't do enforcement there because we have to have a mandate from the city council. I don't know, is that true? But some of these suggestions to me are just unbelievable. Thank you.
I don't know which one you're referring to. It might have been as something that came up in the review of the current draft of the bike and pedestrian master plan.
I don't know.
That was the case, but I mean, I personally haven't heard about anything like that. So it's not
It was all
anything
the
that's...
way to Menlo Park.
Well, the bike and pedestrian master plan hasn't come to council yet. That's scheduled to come in about 3 weeks. So
But how can this be happening?
it's not happening.
I know, but how can this be proposed?
Nothing has been decided to happen.
When the last traffic czar, who has left the building fairly quickly, was proposing similar kinds of obstructions and restricting parking. To me, there's no thinking here.
I think your question is, why would we put up a wall there? And the
That
answer is,
or
we
other
haven't even talked
impractical
about it yet.
solutions.
We haven't even talked about it yet, so I don't know if it's in the committee, or if you want to comment on that, Ed, if you know anything about that, sure.
Well, to pick up where the mayor left off, there is a draft of a bicycle pedestrian transportation plan that's currently circulating, and I'll tell you, it has gotten people's attention. And that is what it's intended to do. As the mayor pointed out, the city council will be holding a study session on it in a few weeks, and that will be a first opportunity for the council to weigh in and to get an initial read on some of the feedback. Some of it is putting what's called protected bike lanes on our arterial streets, and you can love it or you can hate it, but again, it's there for the purpose of getting feedback as a part of the planning process. So that's one. Another note is that as it relates to police enforcement, hopefully you've seen them around town more. They certainly have been. We have a traffic unit that is now back in operation that was not for a while post-COVID. And you are hopefully seeing that, as I'm seeing them, issuing tickets. Now, I will say that not all of those tickets are related to speeding, because we do have some constraints on our ability to enforce speed laws on several of our major arterials, but that's an issue that we're working through with the police department now, and may lead to some additional issues coming forward to the city council with some options for consideration.
Good, thanks. Yeah, we added back money, and we now have that 3-person traffic team back, and they are issuing tickets.
Hi, I'm Mark Lawrence. I'm a resident of Midtown, and I had 2 concerns about recent council actions, and we just hit on one of them. I saw talk of putting bicycle lanes on Embarcadero Road, and I have to say I think that idea is utterly insane. This Embarcadero Road is heavily congested now, and anything that would reduce traffic lanes would turn it into a nightmare. My other concern was recent talk of basically turning the lights out They're talking about a curfew for your yard lights, unless, I guess, you live in a certified high crime area. I don't want the city telling me what time to turn off my yard lights. Thank you.
Other questions?
My name's Mary Holzer, and I live about a block and a half that way. I am very pleased to hear that Embarcadero Road is going to get some traffic control because it's insane right now. I'm nervous every time my kiddos bike to work to school because it's so congested and the people drive so fast. So thank you, that's great. The question that I have is, this is all very interesting. How are you coordinating with Stanford with respect to housing development? Stanford has, many people that live in the city. Does it matter?
So since the beginning of this housing cycle, Stanford has been involved as early as the original housing element working group, which I was on, and they were very active on that. They are subject to all of Palo Alto's laws, and so a couple of the projects in the El Camino area are on Stanford land, and no, those are on Stanford land, yeah, that's what I meant to say. But there's others that are on Palo Alto land, so they're fully involved in that. And not speaking about anything that's not already out in public, we press them all the time to please put up more housing because you're bringing a lot of the people here to the hospital and to the university, and we need help from that. So they're well aware of that, and our relationship, I would also say, is very very cordial, but they know where we stand on that issue.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you are, and they are at least considering more housing for Stanford people, because I think that many of the people that are zooming down Embarcadero are going to Stanford.
Yeah, they are, and there's some land in the downtown area that is covered by the downtown area planning that will probably be in the next housing cycle, because we know there's always another housing cycle that we'll hear from the state about. So.
Yes, hi, David Hirsch. I'm on the ARB, and I live in Crescent Park. We've been getting a number of projects that are townhome projects, and from the beginning, it seemed to me that we know that the builders really love the townhome project. I guess it's a moneymaker for them, and it's not as potentially used areas for townhomes ought to be kind of mixed use. I say greater density and is a possibility. And the zoning, I believe, states that depending upon the size of the project property, based on the acreage, it should be mixed housing. So how is it possible to control projects when a developer comes in and says, I want all townhomes, if in fact the project is a large area? I understand that.
But it definitely, so there's the question, it definitely depends on the zoning, and if the zoning is, the PHZ, then there's a lot of latitude on the part of council to make a decision. You want to add to that? Okay.
Well, actually, isn't there a ruling in the zoning, Jonathan, for a project that exceeds 1 acre, for example, it has to have 2 housing typologies, and if it's 3 acres, it has to have more than that?
Yeah, I can't recall off the top of my head the specific standards, but we do require for certain size developments that there be different housing typologies, which is different than land uses. But yes.
So, of course, single-family housing or lesser than single-family houses would then come as a separate typology, which wouldn't increase density, but is it possible to adjust that ruling so that it's multiple dwelling mixed with townhomes in any situation that changes the,
Anything's possible. So, yeah, I mean, anything, we can look at any changes that we need to, but
well, looking ahead, a developer, I think, has proposed a site on Gang Road for townhomes. How will the city approach that in order to increase the density?
My recollection is that the applicant is either at or pretty close to the minimum density requirements that are set forth for that zoning district. We do have conversations with the applicant team, and we have told them about the typology requirement for that project size. I'll note this is also a builder's remedy application that was filed, and so the city does not have the same regulatory position as it might if it were being processed through our traditional zoning standards.
So you're saying that there is no chance to make it denser than what is being requested?
So we don't have a requirement, we can't require that of this particular development.
the mic is coming.
Thank you. Jeff Shore. And by the way, thanks for hosting these things. These are great. At your last one, you had a February 27th, and you said that you appointed an ad hoc committee, Bert, Stone, and Rectal, to engage with Valley Water with regard to the proposed $20 million reallocation to South County. Has there been any development of that you could report?
Sure. Yes, thank you, Mr. Shore. Appreciate your staying on top of that issue. This is related, again, to Valley Water, and they had a proposal to essentially shift funding from Palo Alto Mountain View sea level rise project to San Jose. Effectively, I think it's fair to say that the response to that proposal has basically kicked it down the road. And as a result, the Valley Water is instead paused or stopped that proposal. They're going back with a review of how they would make shifts like that. And staff will be meeting with them to talk about how that proposal will be constructed before it comes back to the full board. So I think essentially the quick action in response to the proposal has prevented it from going forward, and now we're really looking at a much longer process of development of their policy on how a major funding shift like that would happen.
Great, thank you. I have a quick question about Builder's Remedy. I know there's been about 10 Builder's Remedy applications, and the city has had different reactions to them, in some case negotiating for zoning. The one I have a question about is 156 Cal Avenue. I know the planning department has recently concluded that the application is complete. I kind of want to know what that means for that project and what is the procedure going forward. Will the council have a chance to discuss it? Is it effectively approved? What leverage, if any, does the city have to demand any revisions or reject it? Thank you.
Great, thank you for the question. So for that project, yes, it is deemed complete, and the planning department is processing it as it would any other application. And so this particular project does require environmental review, and we anticipate preparing an environmental impact report. It's unknown at this moment if there will be, what impacts may be associated with that development. But as an EIR, that project will find its, well, in addition to the fact that it requires an environmental impact report, given that it is a significant development, the city council will have a chance to weigh in on this when it's time for it to make a decision.
Jim Lewis, Crescent Park. I was wondering if you could give us a status update on the Newell Bridge replacement, along with any anticipated repairs to the creek area to prevent flooding in the future.
Is this breaking news? It might be. Well, so good news on Newell Road. We have received the Caltrans approval to proceed with construction, or really bidding for construction. The project's currently out for bid, and the plan is to bring it to the City Council for award of a construction contract by the end of June. This will be a multi-year project, so I wouldn't expect the work to really be completed this year, but there's some work that needs to be done, outside of the rainy season, so we'll want to get that working so that once we get through the rainy season, we'll be able to complete the next phase. With respect to other improvements along San Francisco Creek, the San Francisco Creek Joint Powers Authority, SFCJPA, is reviewing a variety of alternatives for creek widening and related changes that could be done in the stretch between effectively the 101 freeway and Middlefield Road. And you should expect to see more information coming out of the JPA really in the month of May. And so we're actively involved with that, and also had some city council discussion on the potential to expand that into more active involvement specific to Palo Alto. So more to come soon.
I have a question.
My name is Rob Nielsen, live in Midtown. Just had another question on the builder's remedy. I understand you're supporting a bill to modify the builder's remedy. And there's something like 2,000 units in the pipeline, if I'm correct, that are associated with such projects. Do you have a plan what to do if the bill passes and some of those have to be removed?
We feel that we have enough housing sites in the housing element that with our normal process, including all the areas that Director Late just recapped, that over time we can make our quotas without having to do any builder's remedy. The city is not taking a position that we're opposed to the state law on builder's remedy. The interest in supporting bills is to fix what one council member has called flagrant fouls, to use the basketball term, because you get things like the proposal on 80 Willow, which is whatever it is, 125 stories, and you talk about traffic. I mean, that would be just a nightmare if that went up. So there's some things that I think that most legislators, when they voted for that, never thought about unintended consequences, like a building like that. Maybe some did, but overall, the idea is, could you tweak that bill and admit that, as some legislators have told me, we made some mistakes, we should try to fix that. So that's the concern, is that there's some flagrant, I still can't say that, just really bad buildings that just don't work in the community or for the transportation or for the infrastructure needs, and those weren't really intended by having teeth in a bill to manage all the housing elements in the state. So that's our level of interest in those. We've only actually taken a position on one so far. Maybe one more, is there one more question?
Is there a status of the public safety building?
Sure. Status is construction is virtually complete. We're finishing some final inspections that are required to get it's called a temporary certificate of occupancy. The plan is to move some of our units in there, hopefully within the next month.
Okay, is there one more?
Hi, I'm Peter Malte with the ARB. It seems that without getting area plans or larger scale thought and development and zoning change in place, we're not going to really be able to change the housing trend. To get significant numbers of housing, we need area plans to make that work. I'm disappointed to hear that the fastest we're doing is 2.5 years, and you seem to think that's acceptable. What can we do as a group to go faster?
I'm gonna hand this to John, but the first thing I wanna say is that it doesn't mean that there won't be housing going up in areas where there are area plans, or not going up, but getting into planning in that 2-year process. So there can be some parallel planning and entitlement in process with the area plan, but I'm gonna let John take that.
Thank you for the question. So an area plan just allows us to focus in on a geographic part of the community and decide, think a little bit more carefully about how we might want to make some adjustments or changes to realize our goals. And the timeline really is a balance between how much community input that we want to receive and help influence the process based on staff and to the extent consultants are used in developing the plan. So when we talk about area plans, that's always the tension that we struggle with. And if we're able to keep it at 2.5 years, I think that would be great. But I want to also note that that's not 2.5 years of active planning and plan formation. We still need to do our environmental analysis. And we account for about 6 to 9 months to do the environmental review. So I would hope long before 2.5 years, we actually have an idea of what we want to accomplish. Possibly as soon as 12 to 16 months from now, we should have a pretty good idea of what we want to accomplish on San Antonio. And as the mayor noted, that can help inform property owners, developers in the area to want to proceed before we even finish the environmental analysis and the plan. We saw something like that happen in NVCAP with the Sobrato organization. I'll also note that the city has taken a lot of initiatives recently beyond area plans to expand housing development. We've talked about the housing focus areas. One of those, our base zoning has increased across the board in response to the housing element in terms of increasing our density and height. Beyond that, we've also, haven't mentioned it here this evening, but there's the housing incentive program and the affordable housing incentive program, which have further increased height and density, reduced setbacks, modified parking, not just in our commercial areas, but all of the multifamily zoning. So there's a number of initiatives that are underway that seek to create opportunities for increased housing production. The area plan is just one component of that.
Okay, thank you. Welcome your feedback over time. If you want to drop myself an email or either of these two gentlemen up here, want your feedback for frequency, topics, etc. So thanks very much for attending. All right.